same. Meaning, if you don't get air in from the outside, it's a high pressure, and then the inside of the building, it's a low pressure. So you need to get that pressure right, because if you don't get it right, then you get a cold draft in the house. So you would literally stand in front of a fireplace, you will get nice and hot, and then when you stand there, you get ice cold, because it's pulling the air from somewhere. Now when you get a fresh air intake vent, it takes that away. Then you don't get a draft, so then you will get a natural convection, meaning the hot air will rise all over the building, up, and then cold air coming down. When we do build units in, or when we do buildings 90% of the time, we get a fresh air as close as possible. Normally we try and hide it behind the unit now. Okay, so that fresh air intake vent has got nothing to do with the other two vents we've got. If we do a built-in, you need the intake vent. This is also fresh air, but it's called the intake vent. So this one is what gets sucked in the room. So it's the room's oxygen that comes in, that the fireplace uses to burn, and then it still sends the hot air up. So the fresh air that comes from the back just forces that for us. It does it quicker. So it brings the cold air in, pushes the hot air up, and then push it back into the room. But now it's clean oxygen that it's actually pushing in. All right. The main problem, or the main thing also about this, is that your chimney has to be corked. So when we used to sell corked, it has to be sealed. So you can't have any leakage next to the pipe, otherwise the hot air will travel past that, and then this won't be sufficient enough. So on a unit that we normally build, the retrofits units like the Godins, the IL65s, and now the IQ, they've got a fan system, and that's what the fan system takes that hot air and pushes that into the room. But if we didn't seal the chimney properly, then the hot air is going to go up there. Alright, so whenever you try and sell a unit, try and think about this little diagram to see that's what you're always going to need. So whenever a guy says he's going to build a new house, you tell him immediately, we need to have a fresh air intake vent. Even on the freestanding units, in the old days we used to have air bricks, and that's what it comes down to. It brings the outside oxygen to the inside of the house. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. That's the most important on all our fireplaces. Alright, so now it's got what we've got on a kilowatt rating. Okay, we normally put on all our price raises, we put the high kilowatt rating, because in South Africa the houses are mainly poorly insulated. Alright, now the law has changed, so they've been putting double glazed windows, so that's well insulated. These kilowatts are all worked out in the European base, because in Europe everything is close by and it's very well insulated because it's always cold. So they always got an 8 to 12 kilowatt or a 10 to kilowatt rating when you look at the unit. We always work on the high one, because we always say we got to burn it at the highest point in South African rooms. The reason for the 8 to 12, for instance, is when it's a very poorly insulated house, you only got to get 8 kilowatt, because then all the heat's going to go through windows and all of that. In a well insulated, you get 12 kilowatts. Right. So when a customer comes in, and he says to you, I want to put a freestanding unit in your house, then you look and you ask him, how big area does he need to warm up? So if he tells you, oh, it's roughly 100 squares, then you try and work it out immediately back. If you just take 100 divided by 20, that's 5 kilowatt. Because about 20 squares works on 1 kilowatt of wood, more or less. Depends on certain units, but that's a ballpark figure. So 100 squares he's going to need, you don't really get a 5 kilowatt, so you go to the closest one that's a 7 kilowatt. And that will be more than sufficient to burn or to warm up that area. But still, then you need to know if there was steps involved, because the steps will influence the burning phase as well. Alright, so that's that. The unit will tell you what area it can warm up. 360 cubes. Normally you divide it just by 2 to get a rough estimated how many squares it can warm up. So 200 cubes will give you about 100 squares. Alright. Then after that, the first thing you can tell them about it is that you've got a radiant unit. A radiant unit, the only radiant units we sell is the Morse 04, all the Godins we've got on the floor. That will be the Le Fontevol, Le Fontemont, and the Q. And the Nomi is also a radiant unit. A radiant unit is when you add the wood and everything gets hot. So the fireplace gets extremely hot on the sides, left, top, bottom, anywhere. So it radiates the heat out. It's not a convectional. So all that happens on a radiant unit is that you control the airflow that comes into the unit. You don't control anything else. The more wood you put, the more heat you're going to get. The negativity about a radiant unit is that you have to stay away a meter all over. you have to come about 200 to 300 away from the back wall because it can crack the back wall. So you need to get a meter away with permanent furniture, curtains, anything like that. You need to stay away with it because it radiates. They do work beautifully. They do warm up a hell of a lot. All right. A convectional unit, the other way around, is that you control your intake and then you control your second combustion. Your second combustion is something, it's the airflow that travels behind the unit that then gets pushed down onto the flame and it burns it again. So in the piazettas, you can see it easily with that little control button at the top there. This little button here. So that controls your second combustion. Alright, okay, Nesta Martin. How to open an Nesta Martin? At the bottom, you go to the left hand side, you lift it up slightly, and then the door opens up. You've got your ashtray at the bottom. You've got your ashtray there. Turn it open, pull it out, and there's your ashtray. And you can close it again. This here is your ash shaker. The ash shaker also on this unit is also your intake, because most of your intake here happens at the bottom. That's where it sucks the cold air in. So what the ash shaker does is when you've burned a lot of wood, you want to shake it a bit, and then more oxygen comes in and the flames will then start going more. This control here is what controls your second combustion on the back here. So that's basically from number 1 to number 3, just opening up that vents much more. Alright, so your ash shaker controls your intake and that controls your second combustion. This lever here, the only thing, we won't use that in South Africa, but A is wood, B is anthracite. So you can burn anthracite in these units.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
But if the quality of our anthracite here is not that good, so I won't recommend it. But you do get guys that ask about it. Yes, you can. The only thing that the difference there is it opens up the vent much more when you put it in the anthracite to get much more oxygen in. And that's basically the Nesta Martin. So the door opens up as well quite easily. It's got a little bit of a adjustable here, so that because the doors on your first couple of burns it moves around quite a lot, and you can just adjust it to close it more easier and all of that. And yeah.